Okay, we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Playlist Shuffle podcast. I'm your boy Jay Malley, and I'm here with a special guest here today with Miss Jen Pyken. She is a music supervisor for TV and film. Jen, how are you doing today? What have you been up to? And let everybody know.
I'm doing great, and what I've been up to today, I don't know. Just been working away on the way home. We're just
Up
in
to today? I don't know.
post, just finishing up paperwork, so lots of paperwork, I guess.
Always
The
busy,
fun
always
part.
busy. Right, always
Ah,
busy. Uh,
yes.
so to give everyone a kind of a short introduction because she has done so much in her career. Um, she's widely known for her work on shows like Workaholics, This Is Us, Lost, and also her work on Happy Gilmore. And the list just goes on and on from there. And we are just so honored to have you on the Playlist Shuffle podcast in our premiere lounge, where we just discuss your career, your experience, and give your knowledge for our audience who are up and coming in the music industry, especially those who are looking to be music supervisors or have their songs possibly have a sort of sync placement opportunities. So we're just going to dive in with these questions that are
Well,
coming up.
thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Yes, of course. We were trying to get you on for quite a while, but we got it done, and we're just so happy that you're on here. So excited.
Yeah,
So my
me too.
my first question for you, once I get it up, there we go. Could you give us a brief background as to where you got started, when you got started, and what made you want to pursue this career?
I'll just kind of go back a little bit to my childhood. We always had music playing in our house, and that was like one of the fun things we would do. Would be they'd make instruments, so music was a part of my life from when I was very little. And so whether you were playing the spoons, my dad played the bongos, we would sing and dance, and it was just a childhood memory that I never, forgot, and it was super fun. Um, by the time I started getting older in high school, I listened, as a kid, I listened to a lot of music, make people mixtapes. I went off to college. I was a DJ at my college, UCSB. I went to a lot of concerts. I was always just around music, and it was just fun for me. I didn't know anything about music supervision at the time. I interned when I graduated college, I had to go get a job, and my last semester of college, I interned at a record label called Restless Records, and I got kind of an inkling of what it was like to work at a record label. And that's kind of when I started focusing more on moving towards the music industry, not knowing that necessarily I'd be in soundtracks or music supervision. Um, so um, I ended up working for a pretty prominent DJ here in LA who is also a music supervisor. So that was pretty cool. The guy named Matt Robinson. He was producing a record for Warner Brothers. I just did whatever I could to get closer to music supervision, even though I didn't even know I was trying to. Um, so a lot of, luck, and a lot of just doing what I love. I ended up, from working from him, I ended up meeting another, a guy who did run soundtracks for Island Records at the time, and I ended up interviewing and working for him. Um, so I worked at Island Records in their soundtrack department, and I worked on a bunch of soundtracks, and I was the person that would mail out CDs, and CDs are just starting to happen, to potential music supervisors, so they use the music. So I was pitching to music supervisors to use music from Island Records and Island Music Publishing. And from there, I just kept moving to different jobs and working with different people to get closer to it. I ended up working for, after that, Karen Rackman, and she ended up being one of my biggest mentors. And I highly recommend, if you, find someone to be your mentor, and someone, maybe it's not necessarily in music supervision, but in the music business, I highly recommend it, because she really guided my career and was so pivotal to me being who I am and what I'm doing today. And I ended up working for her, and she was at the time doing Reality Bites, Pulp Fiction, a hip hop soundtrack called Judgment Night. And I was able to get my first music supervision gig because she was super busy, and I was the coordinator, and she put me on some of her projects. So I got a couple of credits that way. Got just thrown into the fire, so to speak. And from there, I worked with Pilar McCurry, who is just an amazing music supervisor. So I worked for a few music supervisors, Happy Walters as well. And then I went out on my own. And I did that because I had met, there was a girl who was interning, working with me at Pilar, with Pilar, and she was in law school, and she was like, let's just start our own, let's just go work and do our own movies. And I was like, I have this really good job, and I was, doing really well. And I just took that leap of faith and went out on my own. And we had this small project called National Lampoon's Blind Date, and that was with Michelle Silverman. And we went off on our own, and we ended up bringing in Mary Ramos. These are all music supervisors. If you don't know them, look them up, because they're badass and they're super talented, and they work on amazing projects to this day. So I worked with the three of them. I did that. That's when I did Happy Gilmore, which you mentioned was the very first movie I ever did. That was like a studio movie, because I had just done some independent films before that with Michelle. And then I went on to be hired to be the vice president of film and television for Sony Music Publishing. So I kind of changed sides. So now I'm on the music supervision side, but I'm pitching songs to music supervisors. So I got to meet tons of music supervisors, and I did that for like 3 years. And then I realized I wanted to go back to music supervision. And that's what I did. And I've been doing it on my own ever since. Oh, no. There's a little ad in there. I ended up starting coming with Madonna Wade Reed, who's another amazing music supervisor who I love dearly, and who works a lot with the Guild of Music Supervisors, and love her work there, and just love her work in general. And we worked and did a bunch of projects together, like Smallville, One Tree Hill, and Alias, and just a ton of TV shows. I'm probably missing a bunch of them, but I got really big in TV. And then I went out on my own, and I've been working on my own ever since. So here we are.
And here we are. That's really awesome. Pretty similar experience for me, because my household, we always played music, especially R&B and gospel. My dad, he used to play drums, and then I ended up playing clarinet, but also some percussion. I also played bongos in college.
Right
And
on. My brother played clarinet.
awesome. Oh, wow. So that's crazy. But as I was going to school for music business, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And the education of sync placement wasn't there. It was more of like artist management and spotlight artists and artist development. It wasn't much any sync placement. I did take a class for music and film, but that was more of like an extracurricular class. So that was like one of my favorite classes. We learned about scores and leitmotifs and stuff like that. So that's kind of put a seed down to where I wanted to go as far as my career went. But then I went to my master's at Full Sail for film, and then it only took my post production professor. He was a sound engineer, won an Oscar for Dances with Wolves, and
Wow.
he mentioned music supervisor, and I was like, explain that more. And he did it to his best of his knowledge because he collaborated with them, and so that's where I found the calling right there. And ever since then, that was back in 2019, and I've just been pursuing what a music supervisor is, what music supervision is, watching Guild of Music Supervisor content on YouTube during the pandemic, and just watching shows and seeing all the names on the end credits, and emailing cold emails to the supervisor, say like, "Hey, good job, I'm a fan of your work," and everything, and get no replies.
Oh man.
But it took me until I saw Ryan Svensson. I was following him on LinkedIn, and he was posting TikToks on LinkedIn, and he posted that he was doing a course through UCLA Extension, and I applied for that. Best decision I ever made. It really helped open the doors and avenues as to where I could go and what resources to look for and what sort of connections to look out for, and you were one of them. And that's where I took your master course, which y'all see on the screen. We'll
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
talk about that in a
I
bit.
used to teach that UCLA extension course back in the day. I taught that course.
You did, didn't
Yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah. But then after doing it a couple of times, I created my own. But
Did,
yeah, I
didn't you
totally
show up to
taught.
Ryan's class at one time?
I did show up to, I think, one of his classes. I think so. I don't remember.
I think
But
I
I
was in
think,
that class.
yeah, I did. I did show up for one of his. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you were a guest speaker that one week,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I got to know
Another
you.
good guy. Yeah.
Yeah, Austin. Please, y'all research him. He's done like La La Land, Expendables 4, and a whole bunch of stuff. So research him too. Um, which goes into my next question. Do you have like a film or a soundtrack that truly inspired you to pursue this career?
It's interesting because I really wasn't like looking. This wasn't even like, you didn't know about it. There wasn't even very many music supervisors at the time. So it wasn't even a career that like even was something that, now colleges teaches, there's courses. There was nothing when I started. But like when I was, when I was a kid, I was like, I loved like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I was like a John Hughes kid, the John Hughes movie. So it was like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Valley Girl and what other of those movies? I'm trying to think. What other ones are there? I'm trying to think. I'm like looking at Breakfast Club. All those
Yeah,
movies really changed. I always like loved those movies, and they had great soundtracks. So they're kind of like the soundtrack to my youth. Like those, I would go, oh, what song is that? And then I would look it up. Was it a Simple Minds song? Don't You Forget About Me, or was it like I'll Melt for You by Simple Minds, or what was the in oh gosh, in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I loved the Oh Yeah, by
yeah,
Yellow, where oh yeah, it was just so interesting to me, and that someone even like those are the kind of things that I like imprinted on me as a kid, and I always, then that's sort of how I started just listening to music and going to concerts and stuff like that. So that's kind of, I just went to a lot of concerts in college, and then I kind of segued into like DJing a little bit at the radio station, and then that's kind of led me to. So it's just, I don't know if there was like a specific soundtrack that said, oh, I want to be a music supervisor, because there really wasn't. There's like one, like, there was like, not, I don't know if there's one, but there was not a lot at the time.
yeah.
So now I think it's like so cool because there's so many avenues to music supervisors, webisodes, and there's TV, and there's film, and there's podcasts, and there's just like so many different, and commercials, and video games. Like, how insane is that? There's just so many outlets for it. When I started, it was mostly just film and TV and commercials.
Yeah, it's kind of weird thinking about it going back. Films for me, for films, I grew up on like original production, so obviously watching a whole bunch of Disney and DreamWorks. There's a whole bunch of original songs being produced on there. But for me, it was more when it comes to sync placements, it's the video games. Um,
Okay, right. See,
what's it called? Oh, what's that company called? EA Sports Big. I played a whole bunch of NBA Street video games, and that's why I found like hip hop producers like the Herbalizer and Ninja Tune and what Jean Grey. Because me, I grew up in New York, so the music really resonated with me because there's a whole bunch of like old school abstract hip hop, uh, electronic DJs. So like NBA Street and SSX Tricky, and then obviously you got that It's Tricky song by Run DMC, and I played that a whole bunch growing up while playing that game. So I never knew like how those songs got there. I just knew that they were there, and I never knew what there was a process for it until later, like
It's
post
like
college.
radio. It's like you're just, instead of listening to the
Yes,
radio, you're listening to music through your television shows, that your favorite television shows now, the movies you watch, the trailers that you're watching,
yes.
there's songs in there. Obviously the video games that we're talking about. That's so cool. I love to hear that. That's awesome.
So now you're music supervisor, and I'm gonna just let everybody know because you're very busy and your resume tells us. So I'm on IMDb. I'm looking at all the television series that you've done. You have done your episode count is so vast. so wide. You've gone from working on a series that's like 6 episodes, then you worked on 44 episodes. One series in Workaholics, you worked 86 episodes. And This Is Us, 36 episodes, 30 episodes. Like, you've done a whole bunch of episodes. So, you being a music supervisor, you're handed this script. Tell us your process and how you approach, or what factors affects your creative mind, like what ideas you come out or you come up with when you're reading those scripts.
Yeah. So I read the scripts, but I also talk to the creators. Like when I first start a series, even though the music will evolve once we have this conversation, but I'll have like a meeting or a Zoom or in-person meeting with them and just like talk about what they're thinking the vibe of the show is. Obviously, I have to get the job first. That's like the number one thing. So once I get the job, and then I read the script, and then I start doing spotting notes, and I just start coming up with ideas, and I make like maybe like when I read the first script of the first episode of a TV show, I might just make a playlist of ideas that I don't ever even give to anyone. It's just my ideas, and I probably do that on Spotify or on Disco, which is a platform I use to organize my music. It's not disco music; it's DISCO. It's a way to organize and send your music. So I do that, and I just start kind of coming up with ideas, whether, uh, sometimes I have to come up with the theme song. Sometimes I'm involved in helping choose the composer. So it's just music supervision. I would say the number one thing that people think that I pick all the songs, and yeah, I have a very heavy hand in picking the songs, but it's a collaborative process. So I'm working with a lot of people. So it's specifically in TV, which is producer driven, but sometimes I work with the directors. And the producers are sometimes called the showrunners. So I'll work with like these certain group of people. So yeah, so I'll start with that, and then I start, like, if I'm first time working on a show, I might put together a bunch of songs and send it to our editor. So I start building a library of ideas. Now, some of those songs might be used in the season and they might not be, but it's just sort of a jumping off point. So I might make like songs, if there's lots of, car radio sources, I might, or make certain characters I might make songs for, and put them in edit. And I'm always concerned with the budget. So I'm making sure that I'm not sending all big songs and send some indie songs, and so that's a good starting point for me. And then as the series, once it gets shot and we go into post, depending if there's a lot of on cameras, I tend to do a lot of shows that have on cameras, people singing. That means that they're singing or on camera, whether it's a band in the background or someone just singing in the shower or singing to the car radio or just singing in their kitchen. Wherever they're singing, you got to get that done beforehand. So that's another whole step in the music supervision. But a simple show that just has songs and no on cameras, a lot of it is done in post. But I read the scripts as I go along and keep putting music in post, and I collaborate with usually the editor, and I hear from them and I start getting scenes sent to me. That's step 2 after the script.
You mentioned showrunner, so we had Ashley Newmeister on here, and she was talking to us about the relationship between a music supervisor and a showrunner when working on TV series. Could you explain? We have listeners who are aspiring music supervisors. Could you explain the dynamics and the importance of the relationship between the two parties, and how does a music supervisor network with a showrunner?
What do you mean, meet them? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
No, okay, so basically a showrunner is someone who is in charge of the show. Usually they're the writers of the show. Sometimes they're just the producers of the show. So basically I just, email them a lot, and I might send them songs. You build the relation up over time, and you kind of get to know their taste in music. So no, say they like really love a certain band, and you go, oh, you start, sending them songs, and they start giving you feedback on the music you're sending. And I'm like, okay, well, they might like this, or maybe they've never even heard of this artist, and I start sending them songs of unreleased tracks. So I'm building this relationship because I'm excited about what's going on in the TV show, and a lot of times they're super busy, as I am. They run the whole show. That means they oversee everything that has to do with the production. So they have hundreds, maybe 100 people that are emailing them. So I know their time is limited, but I build a relationship with them, and over time, I work with these people again and again. How I meet them, gosh, my very first show that one of the very first shows that I ever did, was Felicity. And at the time, I just got to meet the music supervisor. The first 2 seasons of Music Supervisor, something happened and they weren't on it anymore. And I got an interview, and I didn't know them at all. But I did have an agent. So because I worked for so many people as coordinators, I was kind of known as a coordinator. And when I went out on my own, one of the agents, I'm still with them all these years later, 20 plus years later. I'm very loyal. And they got me that interview, and I didn't have really any TV credits. I'd done an MTV show and with Madonna Wade Reed called Undressed. And that was my only other, I think, really TV credit. So, it was just a leap of faith, and I got put up for it, and I got the job. So sometimes I'm asked when I'm in interviews to give a CD or some music, which I think would be good for the show. And other times I don't. I prefer not to, because it's so hard to guess what people are liking and what they wouldn't like. But sometimes they ask me to make them a playlist after my interviews. So I guess, and now it's just because I have credits. So that show, I got another show, like it just, you build your credits on your credits, and then those producers know other producers, and those writers know other writers. So it's kind of a snowball. Like I did Workaholics, and one of the directors on Workaholics was directing a show for ABC, just give you an idea. And it was called The Neighbors, and it wasn't a really big hit show on The Neighbors. I think we did like 2 seasons of it, but Dan Fogelman, who created This Is Us, created The Neighbors. So the director I met on Workaholics went to direct the pilot for The Neighbors, and then that's how I met Dan Fogelman. And then he brought me onto the pilot for This Is Us. So it's always, you never burn bridges. You always like try to keep in touch with people, whether it's your music editors, or that's how I get work, through word of mouth. At this point in my career, it's a little different, but starting out, I just kind of like, I was just trying to, when I was just starting out, I was just trying to hustle. I had this little this little game called National Lampoon's Blind Date, and it was a video game. And I went to the gaming convention, and I started talking to people about soundtrack. I just try to, like, wherever I could put my face and say, this is what I'm doing, and meeting people, I did it.
Yeah, that does give me a good idea. I need to go to gaming conventions as well, because I've been going to film festivals here in Atlanta, and as well as going out to the Guild of Music Supervisors event, so the conference. And this past month was the Guild Awards, which I picked a good year to go to because there was so much going on with Steven Schwartz and then Jeff Goldblum making a surprise appearance. Awesome. That was pretty fun. So as you said before, don't burn bridges, and building those relationships surely does go a long way.
I swear, from 25 years ago, I'm still friends with people that I knew from a long time ago, and we still connect. And when I was an assistant, so because everyone moves up, and sometimes, like, I've had my bosses work for me, and now you never know who you're going to work for later on.
Exactly. Could you give us an example of when you find a song that's perfect for a scene or whatever's going on the screen, and you pursue it, and what the process is like? Could you give us like a specific project?
Like, what do you mean pursue it? I'm not sure. Like, do you mean like how do I go about licensing it? Or,
yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, I pretty much, before I pitch any songs or send any songs to my shows, I do recognizance. I find out who owns it. I don't put anything in edit unless I pretty much know it will clear, because it's nothing worse than sending a song to the edit bay, and then your showrunners or your producers or whoever you're dealing with fall in love with it, and then you go, oh, it's not clearable. Now, sometimes it does happen you can't clear a song, but I try to like kind of send songs. So I might, I get a lot of music sent to me. I'm listening to a lot of stuff on Spotify. So if I'm going to do that, I kind of like look and see who owns it and research it before, who owns the publishing, which is the sync, and who owns the master, which is the recording. So I do my due diligence. And so for an example, I'm trying to think of something that I just like, something that's been sent to me. And then I'll call I get a lot of music sent to me. And I'll call, make sure that the publishing, they might not have the publishing. Who's the publisher? I might call the publisher. Is this going to fit within my budget? So and every song is different. So it can take some time, but it's worth doing that rather than having them come back to you, later and like you can't clear it.
Gotcha. So, in my experience, thankfully, my first film was very smooth ride. Now I can finally share some of the details because now it's publicly out there. So we brought in our hip hop artist Sun Kuma, and originally we brought him in to produce an original for the film to use throughout the film and definitely for the end credits. But we also end up licensing one of his songs that's already been released called Home Run, and it was for the apartment scene where the main character and his love interest were just hanging out, making dinner before everything goes sideways. And so he had all his metadata information all intact. Everything was smooth sailing from there, and he had his publisher and it splits and details, and we came up with a fee and we got it done and everything, got it edited and mixed in. It was at first it was used as a non-diegetic, and then it became diegetic in the next cut. So I like that kind of technique in films. I think it's always so effective.
Do you want to explain what that is so people know what diegetic is and non-diegetic?
And so non-diegetic is the music that the characters in the film they do not hear. Is only what the viewers hear. So you
Right.
watching in the movie, you only hear, the characters don't. The diegetic is used as a source for the characters to actually like interact with the music. So whether they're listening to their earphones, or in our case, we had it playing on a record player and it was playing through like some sort of
Right.
speakers.
It just
on
that
screen.
our audience might not know what that is.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a fun thing to do. I kind of pitched that technique, so thankfully it worked out.
Awesome.
So now I want to get into your master course, because honestly, if I never used your master course, I don't know if I had like a smooth time working on my first indie film without ever using your master course. It truly got me through that project. That's not a lie. That's not being dramatic. It truly did get me through. So could you explain what inspired you to create this master course and what were the goals of this project?
That first of all makes me so happy. It's so humbling to hear that. Like, I love that, to hear that, because for me, it was a labor of love putting it together. When I started out, like you were talking in the beginning, there's all these courses and there's things. There was nothing out there when I started. And it took me years and years and years to build up all these skills by the time I could music supervise. And I think, it's great that like schools like USC and NYU and all these schools out there that are giving these, you can go to school to do that. But I just, and I taught at UCLA Extension. So I came up with, that I'm going to just put together my own course and, use my 20 plus years experience and, try to, do it in a very, it's like 11 hours. It's not too long. You could do it at your own pace. These are all things I just put myself as the person that would want it, who never had that. So I just put everything in there that I thought was necessary to start music supervising.
And you have so much resources on there as far as the licensing process, and you even have interviews of all the connections that you have. What was the idea behind that? for every module and every topic you had, there was always an interview.
You know what? Because I feel like I watched interviews and I'm like, the people interviewing the people weren't music supervisors. And so like they would interview, I just knew the questions to ask. And these are all, I pulled in like, you know, the director of Game Over Man, he's doing Happy Gilmore 2 right now. I pulled in like people that were actually like super pros, you know, like, and it was fun for me to have conversations with, you know, my colleagues in music supervision, but I also interviewed editors and music editors, publishers, you know, people from the record label, and at a level, these people are at a level that I knew for so long. That was a really fun, comfortable conversation, and I got really good. I felt like the interviews were really solid, and it was a great way. Instead of me just talking all the time about music supervision, I could say, okay, what on your end, how does it work? And so I got like really good responses that I felt like would be really helpful for my students.
Yeah, absolutely. It was new seeing that for me, seeing just these interviews for each module for each topic. That actually helped me as well, seeing the different positions and perspectives and point of views outside of music supervisors. So, like you said, you had like composers, you had I believe you had like a manager of disco on there as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
And
that's the and I get nothing from like promoting disco. It really helped me organize my music, and so
yeah,
I had them walk us through it. But yeah, it was. I even do PowerPoints because I was realizing it actually is kind of complicated. I made PowerPoints so that it really, you know, could get through to each student, you know, in different forms. Some people learn better by video, some people learn better by PowerPoints, and give a little bit of everything.
absolutely. And honestly, it was that disco video that motivated me to get my own disco account as well. Just learning the basics of how to use it, so I'm getting used to that as well. But yeah, you definitely made all those PowerPoints. You did all that work. You did your thing, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you for that. I'm sure others who've taken the course will say the same thing. So thank you for all that work
Oh,
that you put into that.
right on. I just found out something from I was watching a disco tutorial the other day, or I don't know if I saw that on, so it was like on LinkedIn or something. Make sure you put your lyrics when you're doing your metadata, because when you're
Yes,
searching in disco, the lyrics come up if you're looking for like songs about home or water, or, you know, songs about boats, whatever it is. If you have boats in your songs, if you have your lyrics up in your metadata on disco, it'll come up in the search. So just a little tip I just learned myself.
it's great
I'm
you
always
said.
learning. I'm super curious. So I'm like a lifelong learner of
Yeah,
many things.
it's great you say that because Matthew Steele and I, he's a sync agent, and he's the one who brought me on to talk on this panel at Sync Spotlight. We were hosting a seminar at SAE Institute in Atlanta, and we were talking to the students about how important metadata was and how important it was to put your tags in and also your lyrics, just for the reason that you have mentioned. In case someone like me or you want to look up keywords in order to find a song or narrow down a song or maybe a certain genre, the lyrics definitely help your case if you want any sync placement opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
And how long? So when someone pays for the course, how long is the term typically?
It's 2 years. So I figure that's enough time that if you're, you know, take your time, you can either take your time, or you do it very quickly, or you can come back to it. I have a lot of students who, I have people that have taken it and then um, all of a sudden they didn't have a film, and then they get a film and they go back and they start, you know, going back, and they were so super happy they had it because they already had the knowledge, but then they get a film and then they can go back and look up stuff that they were not sure about.
Absolutely. Do you still offer the one-on-one?
I don't. I
You
haven't
don't.
done it for a while because I had a lot to do and I was so busy.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do it again. That's an additional fee to the course. So um, anyone that's already taken it, I still have those mentorships that I'm going to do. But I'm thinking about maybe doing this first time I'm talking about it, so I don't even know if I'm supposed to be talking about it. Maybe doing a
Okay.
course that maybe you'll get some feedback on teaching live, but I haven't decided to do that yet.
Okay, so that's a little bit in the works, and we won't get into
Yeah.
too much into that.
Yeah. No, that would be a ways down the way, but
Yeah.
it would be a complement to the course. So
Yeah, absolutely.
But we'll see.
A funny story. So I knew I needed to take the one-on-one meeting with you, and thankfully I did. I asked all the questions that I needed because, again, I was working on Down for the Count at the time, and you answered all my questions. I jot everything down. I make sure to utilize that, and then the upcoming GMS conference came up, and they do the whole mentorship aspect. And so I signed up for my time. I didn't know who my mentor was going to be. So I got online right at the last minute. And they just said, all right, your table is with Jen. And they said, go over there.
You had no idea?
I had no idea.
I know. And then I told Lainey, I'm like, hey, Jeremiah. And that was so good. I got to meet you in person, which is even better.
I was like, Jen, who was? And I see you.
I know. I love that they asked me to do that. Yeah. I love doing those mentorships at the Guild. That's a great education event that they put on every year. I think it's like May 3rd this year, May 6th, around in May. It's coming up, but it's just a great day of learning about music supervision. Really, just amazing, great energy. You had a great time, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Learned a lot. I speak on panels there, and sometimes while in between, I'll just go and sit in on panels, and yeah, it's really fun for me too. So
yeah, I missed last year because I think I was on vacation, and because I went to the awards this year. I'm probably not going to go in person, so I might go virtually to the conference. Just my bank account.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it's the conference and the awards. It's such great events to go to. I recommend anybody. Even if you don't live in LA, to at least go at least one time.
A lot of people fly in. A lot of my students flew in. I have students from all over the world and all over the country, and a bunch of them flew in. And Louisa, who you met in Colorado, and it's a great way to meet other like-minded people who want to be doing music supervision. It's a great energy and a great just vibe and environment and educational and a little bit of everything. Fun, music. They have bands play. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. So, as we near the end of this interview, I want to harp back on to, you mentioning that you didn't have the education on music supervision that you had back then, and even typically I didn't have it initially as well, but then I was just suddenly introduced to the term of it. But throughout my education, I didn't have the education that I wanted as well, and just catching up on it on my own. So, do you think that the conversations of sync have grown exponentially over the years through your perspective? And what do you suggest that there could be done as far as like any education? Like, could there be more sync courses within the colleges or even high schools?
Well, I just feel like there's so many companies out there that are giving these tutorials. There's a lot online, like What Up Pitches. They're based in Chicago. They do events, and that's a great way to learn about sync. I mean, it's changed so much since I started. I mean, there was like a handful, and I'm talking about like a handful, like 10 sync companies that I would go to, and then the major labels, and then the indie labels. But there wasn't I feel like there's so many sync agencies right now. And there's, just conferences. I would just, look up different conferences. I give a list of conferences in my course that you can download, to go to. And you can, those will be really helpful in understanding sync and understanding publishing, because publishing was one of the hardest things for me to understand as when I was learning, because there was nothing, I couldn't go anywhere to learn about it. So, and just understanding, just the terminology in sync, like one stop, just knowing that one stop is that you can go to that person and license the song, the sync and the master recording in one place. So just those kind of conferences, and you meet a lot of people, and you meet songwriters, and you meet, people that are signing people to sync companies and they have panels and I'm off the top of my head, I'm so bad. I can't think of how many there are, but there's just a bunch of them out there. So it's a great time for learning. If you take the time and you talk to people and you're curious and you ask questions, I think you can learn a lot. Because it's not like all of a sudden not super easy. It's not like, oh, you know, there's lots of different songwriters on a song. They might be samples. The whole clearance part of being a music supervisor is super important. It's there's the creative part, and that's super fun. But I also find the clearance part I kind of get creative at it because I gotta have to figure out how I can track all these people down, or I have to figure out how I can afford it. And I look at it because I have a creative mind. I just kind of go with a creative attitude when I'm doing paperwork. But it's a lot of paperwork. And, if you like paperwork, it's a good, and you're good at it and you're organized, or you could build that muscle by, learning from these different sync, workshops that they have out there. I mean, they're, I know you're on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn, I see them on LinkedIn. And the Guild does some, and a lot of sync companies that pitch songs to music supervisors do them. I'm kind of repeating myself, but there's a bunch of opportunities out there because like I said, when I started, there wasn't very many.
Yeah, and I remember when COVID came around, a whole bunch of like these conversations definitely came up about, especially through social media. Everybody's doing podcasting, everybody's doing interviews virtually,
Yeah.
like we're doing now. So COVID I think COVID did have some sort of effect as to like accessing
Well, it
these kind
affected
of
the whole world.
conversations.
I mean, it
Exactly.
affected everything about, interactions and
Hmm.
yeah, it's so nice to be able to, go meet people and talk to them in person.
Yeah, it,
That's important, that connection is so important and that's a relationship building. That's an important part of music supervision because sometimes like if I go to a show and I go see the record label or the person that publishes it, I go to see the show, I like the artist, then I have like a connection. Like sometimes I get to meet the artist. So it's really important to get your job done because we didn't get even into this, but TV is super fast. You got to get that clearance in a day, maybe 2 days. Sometimes you might have more time, but you got to like get it done. Film's a lot longer. It's a longer process, but sometimes, when you're pitching songs and you need to definitely respond to the music supervisor right away. Don't be like all cool and be like, oh, I'll get back to them tomorrow and I feel cool. But no, like that, it could be like they might move on. So that's my little tip. Like it's super important to be on top of if you're on the other side, you're an artist or something and you're watching this.
yeah, and
Because
I
I
take
have
that
to
into
like get my job
consideration.
done and I don't have like time sometimes to like wait for responses and
Yeah, yeah, I always keep that in mind because now I work for I'm a sync rep now at Lucheska Publishing, and I always want to keep in mind of like music supervisors have a deadline, and so if ever we have like upcoming interactions, I've always got to be like on my game. Even though I have a full time job, I still have to maintain that sort of balance between the two positions, between my two jobs, and respect the time of the music supervisor. So I definitely
definitely.
keep that in mind as well. So artists,
Yeah,
please keep that in mind,
yeah.
please. Music
Yeah, I
supervisors,
mean,
they have a
it's hard.
deadline.
Yeah. Yeah, deadlines. There's always deadlines. You have to pivot. Being a music supervisor, you got to be good at pivoting. You got to be,
Mhm.
okay with deadlines, so it's a lot goes into it.
Yeah, for me,
A
I
lot
could
of
just use
skills.
more muscle memory of like working the paperworks. I actually find out like I love doing cue sheets. Like I
There
love
you
doing cue
go.
sheets.
Like you don't hear that many people say they love doing cue sheets, but if you're like really detail oriented and so a lot of
Yeah.
times the music editor on independent films, sometimes the music supervisor does the music cue sheet, but sometimes the composer does the music cue sheet. But on like TV shows, they're very detailed, and the music cue sheets are so important because that's how you get your songwriters paid. They get
Yes.
royalties. So, and especially indie artists, that's important um, that they get their royalties. So, I'm very stickler about it. Make sure they're correct.
Yeah, same. I
Double
think it's
check.
I think it's the data entry person in me because my full time job, like all I do is data entry every day. It's a production job all day, every day. I work in auto financing, so
Okay.
numbers, validating everything
Well, that's
for
good for
customers and stuff
budgets
like
too,
that.
numbers,
Exactly.
there's budgets, so you can pull from that, from what you're doing in your day job until you
Mhm.
get into, being able to do other projects. So,
Yeah, exactly. That's what I did for my internship at Music Supervisor Inc. As far as like organizing the music catalog. So I use that sort of technique for my full time job and put it into my
they probably
internship. So
loved
that helped.
that. They probably didn't want to lose you. They're
Yeah.
like, 'cause it's not, every internship's different. You do different things at
Yes.
them, but that sounds like that's a super important one. It doesn't sound glamorous or anything, but that's how you learn.
Absolutely.
I remember I worked on a movie and, they didn't have the lyrics. Not all the lyrics were up on the internet of everything like they are now. And I had to sit and listen to a song over and over and over and write out the lyrics.
Oh man.
Because you have to turn the lyrics in
Yeah.
with your movies, not necessarily with TV shows, but some TV shows you have to turn the lyrics into. But yeah, I remember I was like, took me all day because I would listen over and over and I would like, stop the tape, start it, stop the CD, start it, and it was actually for Pulp Fiction. So I was the music coordinator on that. Yeah.
Okay.
I remember it because I'll never forget to this day because I listened to the song "Flowers on the Wall" like 100 times, maybe more.
Okay.
Anyways, those are fun memories for me.
Yeah.
I have like great stories about like all these different projects I got to, I was in the background. I wasn't a music supervisor on it. I was just music coordinating and doing whatever needed to get done. And that was that day's job.
Yeah, it's perfect because that's my favorite movie. So it's fun to
Wow.
hear that kind of story. And
Yeah.
with you and I was just saying this real quick, seeing Bonnie Greenberg at the awards and seeing all the work that she has done, like The Mask, that's always been my
She's
favorite
a
movie. I watched that
legend.
with my dad. Yes.
She is a legend and she's so funny. It made me cry. I thought her speech was beautiful.
All my memories of watching The Mask with my dad, just like
Aww.
when she was up there talking and speaking and hearing those credentials and seeing them do all the tribute performance like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was so awesome. So I can't thank y'all enough for your work. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of concludes like our interview because we gotta respect your time. We know we gotta get you out of here. So if you could let everybody know where they can find you, whether it's your master course or they want to book your music supervision service.
Oh, it's musicsuper.net. Pretty simple, musicsuper.net. You can check it out.
There it is, musicsuper.net. There you go.
If you're interested, yeah. If you're just interested in like the process and see if that may be something you want to do, it's a good start.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, thank you all again for tuning into the Playlist Shuffle podcast, and thank you again, Jen Pyken, for coming on. We were going to get you on all this time, and we finally did it.
It's been so long. I apologize. I know.
No,
you're promised.
Good.
And I ran into you at the awards, and I pulled you aside. And I said, "I'm going to be on your podcast." I have not forgotten. I am like, I have a list, and you're at the top of the list. And I'm like, you're going to get. I'm going to do it. And so I'm glad we both found time to do this. So thank you. It's been fun.
You pulled me over. You say we're going to do it. I said, okay.
I said, you're like, okay. And I emailed you, and I was like, say that's a really important thing I want to say. If you say you're going to do something, do it. The 4 agreements, which is like, don't. It's important, and I take that to heart. So I knew as soon as I saw you, I walked by. I'm like, I know I'm going to do your podcast, and so here I am. So thank you for your patience.
Into existence. Absolutely.
Yeah, patience and I got to see you in person, but that was nice too.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming to LA.
Always. It was always a good time seeing you. Always a good time chatting with you. Again, thank you so much. It means a lot for you to come on here. Everybody, we hope that you had a great time watching this episode of our Premier Lounge Talk segment of the Playlist Shuffle podcast. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe and share. I have organized a playlist of all the interviews on YouTube available and on Spotify. So go check us out. please, and we truly appreciate it. Y'all have a great weekend, and thank y'all once again. Jen, hats off to
Peace
you.
out. Thank you.
Peace out.
Bye. Have a
Bye-bye.
great week. Bye.
Yeah.